3 men stood against a king. 3 men defied the flames. Their story is one of faith, courage, and an unshakable belief in their God. But who were these men before they became legends? This is their story. The untold history of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. The origins. Noble blood in a fallen kingdom. Before they were heroes in the blazing furnace, before they stood before the mighty king Nebuchadnezzar, these men were young boys in a kingdom that had fallen. The story begins in Judah, the land of the Israelites, in the late 7th century BCE. BCE refer to years that came before the birth of Jesus Christ. The kingdom of Judah was a fractured and troubled nation. It had seen kings rise and fall, many of whom had led the people away from the ways of their forefathers. But among its nobility, there were still those who clung to the traditions of Abraham, Moses, and David. Among them were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, 3 boys of noble lineage. These were not just ordinary children. They were of royal and aristocratic blood, well educated in Jewish law, literature, and wisdom. They grew up learning the Torah, understanding the sacred traditions, and being prepared to serve their people. But then came the storm, the fall of Jerusalem and the Babylonian exile. In 605 BCE, the great Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II invaded Judah. The mighty armies of Babylon laid siege to Jerusalem, and the young Jewish king Jehoiakim was forced into submission. As part of Babylonian custom, Nebuchadnezzar took captives, not just any captives, but the best and brightest of Judah's young men. He sought to mold them, to turn them into loyal servants of Babylon. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were among those taken. Alongside them was another young nobleman, Daniel. The journey from Jerusalem to Babylon was brutal. Hundreds of miles through deserts, under the watchful eyes of Babylonian soldiers, surrounded by despairing captives. The once proud sons of Judah found themselves in a foreign land, under the rule of a pagan king. The re-education in Babylon. Upon arrival in Babylon, the young men were not thrown into chains. Instead, they were given a different kind of captivity. Besides physical slavery, emotional slavery or mental slavery was mostly used on war slaves. The use of psychological and physical violence to control people and inflict fear. This was the usual practice in ancient times. It can also refer to the psychological trauma that victims of slavery experience. Nebuchadnezzar ordered that the finest young men from Judah be trained for 3 years in the language, literature, and customs of the Chaldeans. They were to be prepared to serve in the king's court. As part of this assimilation, their Hebrew names were stripped away and replaced with Babylonian names. Hananiah became Shadrach, meaning command of Aku, a Babylonian god. Mishael became Meshach, who also is like Aku. Azariah became Abednego, servant of Nego or Nebo, that is another Babylonian deity. But though their names changed, their hearts did not. While most of their fellow captives embraced Babylonian customs, but these young men, alongside Daniel, refused to compromise their faith. One of the first tests came with food. The Babylonian court was filled with rich meats and wines, but many were defiled according to Jewish law. These were often sacrificed to idols. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, along with Daniel, refused to eat the king's food. Instead, they requested only vegetables and water. Their overseer hesitated. If they became weak, he would be punished. But Daniel proposed a test. "Give us 10 days. If we are not healthier than the others, we will do as you say." After 10 days, they appeared stronger and healthier than any of the other young men. Thus, their resolve was rewarded, and their faith in God remained unshaken. Rising to power in Babylon. After 3 years of intense training, these 4 men were brought before King Nebuchadnezzar himself. Their wisdom and understanding surpassed all others, and the king appointed them as advisors in his royal court. Though surrounded by the grandeur and temptation of Babylon, they never forgot their true God. Their faith would soon be tested again, this time in a trial of fire. The golden image and the ultimate defiance. Years later, Nebuchadnezzar, now at the height of his power, built a colossal golden statue, nearly 90 feet tall. It was a symbol of his absolute rule, and he decreed that when the music played, all people in Babylon must bow and worship it. For most, it was an easy choice: bow or die. But for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it was impossible. They could never betray their God. When the music played, they remained standing. Word quickly reached Nebuchadnezzar. Furious, he summoned them and gave them one last chance. "Bow, or you will be thrown into the fiery furnace. No God can save you from my hand." Their response was legendary. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us, and he will rescue us from your hand. But even if he does not, we will not serve your gods or worship the image you have set up." The king's rage knew no bounds. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual. Even the soldiers who threw them in were consumed by the flames. But inside the fire, something miraculous happened. The 3 men walked unharmed, their robes untouched by the flames, and with them stood a 4th figure, like a son of the god. Nebuchadnezzar was shaken. He called them out, and when they emerged, not a single hair on their heads was burned. The king fell to his knees, declaring, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants." He decreed that no one in Babylon should speak against their God, and he promoted them to even higher positions in his kingdom. Legacy. Faith that defied an empire. Though their later years are not recorded, their story inspired generations. They stood against the most powerful king in the world and proved that faith is stronger than fear. The story of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego can be found in the book of Daniel chapter 3. The story is a testament of courage, a warning against idolatry, and a reminder that no fire is greater than the power of God. And that, my friends, is the story of 3 men who walked through fire and lived to tell the tale. What would you have done in their place? Would you have bowed, or would you have stood tall in the face of death? Let us know in the comments. Dear friend, you can subscribe to my channel to get notifications each time I post a new video on Voices from the Past, the place where history speaks. Here's a summary of the book of Daniel chapter 3. 1. The golden image. Verses 1 to 7. King Nebuchadnezzar sets up a 90-foot-tall golden statue in the plain of Dura and commands everyone to bow down and worship it when they hear music. Anyone who refuses will be thrown into a fiery furnace. 2. Refusal to bow. Verses 8 to 18. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 Jewish officials in Babylon, refuse to bow to the statue because they worship only the one true God. Certain Chaldeans report them to the king, who becomes furious and gives them a second chance. They boldly refuse, saying, "Our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods, nor worship the golden image you have set up." Daniel 3:17-18. 3. The fiery furnace, verses 19-23. The king, in rage, orders the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. The 3 men are bound and thrown into the flames. The fire is so intense that it kills the soldiers who throw them in. 4. The 4th man in the fire, verses 24-27. Nebuchadnezzar looks into the furnace and is shocked. Instead of 3 men, he sees 4 walking unharmed in the fire. He says the 4th looks like a son of the gods, or the Son of God, depending on the translation. 5. Deliverance and promotion, verses 28-30. Nebuchadnezzar calls them out, and they emerge completely unharmed. Not even the smell of fire is on them. The king praises the God of Israel and promotes Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to higher positions in Babylon.